Hi, my name is Jamie Lynch, and you are listening to Eating Habits, my podcast about everything restaurants. I will explore the human element of the hospitality business, and I'll talk to the who's who in restaurants, explore their stories, and hear what's on their minds in the ever-changing landscape of the food and beverage industry. Hello, listeners. Welcome to another episode of the Eating Habits podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Lynch, joined by Adam Hodgson. He's our culinary director at Fifth Street Group, and we're going to be talking today about the inspiration behind our quarter deck tasting menu experience at Tempest Restaurant on Market Street. There will be tickets available on Open Table under the Tempest Restaurant site there. You can secure a seat for our limited tasting experience coming up on April 4th. That's this coming Tuesday. Hope to see you there. Enjoy the show. All right, cool. Welcome, listeners, to another episode of Eating Habits. I'm joined here today with Adam Hodgson. Sorry, I butchered that.
All good.
Everybody always does that. Our VP of Culinary at Fifth Street Group. We're going to talk a little bit about the quarter deck tasting menu today. What's up, Adam?
What's going on, Chef? How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for doing this with me.
Absolutely.
I needed you to co-host this so I didn't sit in my closet and talk to myself for a podcast, because that's kind of weird.
Happy to do it, Chef. That is kind of weird.
All right. Yeah, it is weird. I don't want to be that guy that's like, my fiance is like, what are you doing in the closet talking to yourself for an hour? So
this guy's
weird.
out of his mind.
Yeah, right. Cool. So the topic that I have today is I want to talk a little bit about tasting menus. You and I have done a bunch of tasting menus together over the years. First at Five Church back in the day, now Church and Union. We've done them for big events, Outstanding in the Field. Yep. We've done that's kind of a national pop-up tasting menu kind of thing. And then now we've got the quarter deck tasting menu at Tempest in Charleston. Do you like doing tasting menus? What's your take on the tasting?
I do. So tasting menus are a lot of fun. It's a break from the kind of day-to-day menu stuff that we do at the restaurants. It's a chance to be super creative and work with the seasons. Mm-hmm. Also when you're like a young cook, kind of like making his way through his career and trying to find what you want to do, you're always like, look and see what Ferran's doing, what Thomas Keller's doing, and you like fantasize about doing all these like tasting menu type scenarios. Mm-hmm. And that works in some places, and it doesn't always work in the place that you land to build your career in. And so having the opportunity to like flex, do these tasting menus, and kind of like get that all out of your system and just doing that regularly is a whole lot of fun.
Yeah. Totally. I love it. I mean, and I think, it's interesting. You're right, because like tasting menu restaurants are a different beast, right? Than the kind of restaurants that we run. Tasting menu restaurants often are about the chef's whim, right? Whatever's going on in the chef's mind, or what story they're trying to tell, or something like that. And restaurants like we run are aimed towards the guest experience, right? It's less about, the food is creative, and it's about what the direction we feel the concept needs to go, and that's fun and satisfying and interesting to do. But I hear you, like getting to dig deep into your kind of the culinary caverns of your mind and seeing what kind of morsels you can scrounge out of there is really fun and interesting, and challenging too. I remember, so this will be our second installment of the quarter deck, right? We did one in February. It was super fun, but we had some challenges when we were putting that, we were testing some of those ideas, right? Like we had, I think, more failures than successes.
100%. I think we had to make Gougiers 5 times.
Yeah. And it's still, I don't think they were perfect either. Like they were totally satisfactory, but they weren't perfect.
Exactly. So, there's a lot of testing and stuff involved, because when you approach these sort of menus, it's your opportunity to kind of like put these crazy creations that you have in your mind to work, whether it's flavor wise or visually or how it's going to be presented to the guest. And playing around with all those things, you know, you're going to have successes and failures in order to get it right, or just straight up failures and you got to move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
You know,
was there anything on our previous menu that we had to scrap altogether? Was there a dish that we were like, this is not working, we got to move on?
There was. I don't remember what it is though.
Yeah. That's the great thing about doing the quarter deck thing is like we get to move on.
Yeah.
Like we don't have to dwell each day on it and be like, oh man, we got to figure this out. We can be like, okay, this was a great success. Let's put that to the repertoire, or like scrap it, move on. Let's get back to work.
Yeah. I mean, you made squid chips, what, 4 or 5 times before you got the right scenario down?
At least. Yeah. But I was happy with it at the end. So it ended up working, but it was a struggle. I was getting frustrated.
Yeah, for sure.
And the gougères were frustration too. Yeah, so super fun. So the quarter deck is going to be, and is continuing to be, and we're excited about this next one. It's going to be a chance for us to get out of the norm, to highlight a theme or whatever's going on in the culinary world that interests us. This one happens to be spring, my favorite season. I don't know about you.
Dude, I second that.
Yeah.
Spring is the best.
Yeah.
You have all the best chef things to work with.
Yeah. And I think the cool thing about spring for me is like I get less involved. Our last menu was very like technique driven. It was like new techniques, interesting things that we can't do on a big scale, you know, techniques you can only do kind of on small scale for a limited number of people. But for spring, for me, it's about the product, right? Like
Absolutely.
Everything is fresh coming in. We've got peas, you've got morels, you've got soft shell crabs, you've got
ramps.
Ramps are only around for a month, right? So we're gonna jump all over that.
Yeah, get as many as you can.
Yeah. Then we might have to put ramps in every course.
You know, make puree, freeze them, like prolong your ramps as long as possible.
Right. And so that's what's exciting about spring. It's that renewed energy, fresh green ingredients, totally seasonal stuff that's only around for a short period of time before you get into the slog of summer where it's too hot to grow anything.
Yep.
So this is a really fun one, and I'm really excited about the menu that we're putting together.
Yeah, me too.
Cool. What about, I know you have an idea for this menu that you want to work on.
I do.
I don't want to divulge what the dish is, but okay. What is it? What is the ethos of this dish that's exciting to you, and why you want to try it? Because I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be a really cool dish, and we're totally going to nail it.
Yeah.
We need to get cracking on it.
Absolutely. So it's a spin on like an approachable Southern classic, but when you get it, you're not going to know what you have until you take your first bite. Yeah. And it's going to trick you a little bit when you get it. You're not going to be expecting what is to follow. Right. That's the best way I can kind of describe it without saying what it is. Yeah. You know? No, totally.
It's definitely like one of those sleight of hand kind of dishes, right? Where when you see it, you think you see what you see, and you know what that is, right? Exactly. You're like, oh, okay, cool. All right, what's this? But then when you dig in, you're like, holy shit, this is not at all what I thought. And moreover, because of the way you're presenting it, they won't really know until they're into it what it is.
Exactly.
Right?
You know, that's the fun part.
Are you thinking that you're going to want to talk to the guest about this dish?
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe come out and say, "Hey, this is what's going on," so they're not completely dumbfounded, or maybe stop in after they dig in.
That might be the play. I've been thinking about that, to be honest with you. It's like, do I let them just completely be surprised, you know, and just go at this and expect this, or do I go out there and describe the dish to them? I think the play is in the middle of the course.
I think so too. And I think that's another fun thing about a tasting menu, that like we can't do that for every guest all the time in a regular service, right?
Yep,
like
correct.
You're on the pass or whatever. And so for this event, these types of events, it's really cool because we can add a service element that we normally wouldn't be able to do, right? Whether it's a table touch, come out a few bites in and kind of play with their mind a little bit and see where they're at and actually interact in a way and see how the dish is, you know, triggering them or they're responding to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of fun. I think that might be the play.
I think so.
Yeah. It might get challenging though. We'll see. Yeah, you might end up spending half the time in the dining room, and I'm going to be back there in the weeds putting it together. Cool. I'm interested for that dish too. I think also that might be the only real trickery I think that we have planned. Everything else seems pretty just like, if we end up doing the menu that we think we're going to do,
Yeah.
It's going to be pretty ingredient driven.
Absolutely. And that's fine too. Like when you're looking at tasting menus, it doesn't always have to be like, these tips or tricks and,
like mind meld.
Yeah, mind melds and magic tricks. Like sometimes like the best trick that we can play is just creating a dish that is perfectly executed.
100%.
Like those are some of my favorite meals. Thinking back to
hit me with one.
Probably one of my favorite meals ever. And I've eaten at Alinea and some of these Michelin star restaurants that do these crazy tasting menus, but is one of your old chef's restaurants, La Conda Verde. Nothing on that menu was like blow your mind, crazy presentation,
right? Ingredient you didn't know what it was.
Exactly. It was all very like simple, approachable food that was just executed perfectly. Like the dessert course made my knees weak, right? It's just one of those sorts of dinners, and for that to be one of my most memorable dinners just speaks a lot that you don't have to do all the crazy magic tricks. You can just put together the food and execute it perfectly and have the same effect.
Right. I like that. And that's the great, and spring allows you to do that, right? Because you have that amazing product that you can really showcase, I think some of the challenging times that we're going to face with doing this kind of event is when we get into some of the seasons where, like summer in Charleston is difficult. Like things don't grow when it's that hot and humid and evil. And so, how are we going to be able to play with that? And I think that's when you have to reach outside of the ingredient and start looking at, technique or some other things like that to make it happen.
True.
I'm trying to think of like one of the best tasting menu experiences I've had. Oh, you know what? I think it was the catbird seat. I think it was when you and I went to the catbird seat together.
That was an excellent tasting menu.
Yeah, there was, and I enjoyed the experience. Like the experience was super cool. Being able to observe, like we're both chef geeks. So like watching chefs prepare food is like, we could sit there and do that all day.
Yep.
So that was interesting. But what I really liked about the food, he had some things on the menu that I thought were daring. Like there were some ingredients that I was like, man, that's pretty ballsy to present it that way.
Yep.
And so that was, to me, I was interested in that. I was like, how's that going to go? And the coolest part was that he nailed it. I think the dishes that were most questionable in my mind, I was like, in my mind, because I have preconceived notions about all this stuff, how's it going to work? And they totally did.
Yeah, the durian dish there blew my mind.
Yeah.
And that was the one I was most like,
Because we've both smelled it. Yeah. If you've smelled durian fruit, like how could you possibly make that thing taste good? It smells like a gym sock that's been left in a hamper for 2 years.
Yeah,
or
like
something.
a hockey bag.
Yeah, it's a really pungent, nasty odor, but none of that came through in the dish. It was sweet and like a little bit earthy, but in a pleasant way, like not in a musty way, like in just like a mushroomy umami kind of way.
Yeah.
That was super, super kind of crazy.
Yeah, the texture was nice too. It was like a really soft caramel. It was just a really pleasant dish to eat, and I was really surprised at how that came out. So,
one of the other things I like about this specific event, the quarter deck, is the collaborative nature of it, right? So the idea is that that we will get together. These two happen to be you and I, but I think we're going to bring in either some other chefs and even younger chefs in our group to start playing with ideas. And to me, that's a lot of fun. It can get tiresome creating in your own mind all the time. I find myself getting into a system of like creating food where things seem similar.
Yep.
You know, I'll start like, and I'll get stuck on an ingredient or something, and that ingredient will show up in my menu kind of development over and over again. And so it's really good, I think, to collaborate, right? To get some new ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. I I can speak from experience from working with you the last 11, 12 years, that, and having chefs below me, is that when you're writing these menus, whether it be a tasting menu or just your normal restaurant menu,
Mm-hmm.
that the more people that you work with on this, the better it comes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, with everyone spitballing ideas, you might not always have the best idea or the best technique. And with everyone thinking about it and just throwing out their thoughts, you can come up with a really good plan on how to execute something that either might be different, might be a cooler technique, or
Mm-hmm.
something more efficient on the line. And
Yeah.
so bringing everyone together and doing that sort of scenario, I've found has made almost a better product in the end.
Totally.
You know, using everyone around you, it's, you know, it's a smart move. And also being a young chef, I mean, when the first couple years that we were working together, like I saw you in this like super chef sort of light, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you like came to me and you were like, all right, so what are your ideas for the new menu? Like, that excited me. That meant a lot to me at that time in my career. And having that sort of relationship to where we could fire off stuff together and test dishes, you know, really inspired me to keep moving forward and keep developing as a chef.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important for these guys that are below us and in the culinary ranks to exercise their minds and start working in that direction.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I remember back like when I was a young cook in New York, you know, working for Danielle and Circle and stuff, and putting together these menus. I mean, that was the same thing for me. You know, like I was just a line cook, like having to do on the fly tasting menus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And having Andrew or, you know, one of the other chefs be like, hey, you know, you've got the fourth course on this tasting. This is what I'm thinking. Blah blah blah. What do you think? And I was just like, I'm not qualified. You know what I mean? Like, I can cook the shit. Like, I will cook the shit out of it. But like, I don't know if I should be throwing my hat in the ring. But it was an inclusive kind of thing, right? They wanted the cooks to be involved. We didn't have say, obviously, in like what the menu was, but they included us, right? And that meant a lot, and definitely inspired me to like cook harder.
Yeah.
Faster, you know?
Yeah, for
cleaner. Sure. Like, I wanted my technique to be like super perfect. That's a good point. I hope that, and we should think about doing this. I mean, I've thought about doing it, but we should try to make it happen. Maybe for after the spring menu, because I'm excited about this one. This is going to be a fun one to kind of just, you know, play with our food a little bit. Is to bring in some of our sous chefs and stuff to help develop the menu, and maybe you and I could like steer the ship.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Or even just give some perspective and guidance and let them kind of develop the menu, and then be there to help execute, right? So that we can, because I think that's an interesting thing for young chefs and cooks to learn, is that it's different. It's different to do a tasting for 40 people than it is to cook for 40 guests in your dining room, where your mise en place is, you know, you've got an entire kitchen built, your mise en place is built around the dishes you're going to cook.
Yeah.
And with the tasting menu, it's like, you know, you got to go course by course, and it's a lot of different touches, right? You're talking about, so here's something that we should talk about, because I felt this a little bit after the first one was, so we're doing a 5-course menu.
Yep.
With 7 to 10 dishes. So it's a condensed tasting, still multi-course, but it's a lot of bites. And each one of those bites is a dish. You know, it's not like a bite of, you know, a grape.
Yep.
Right. Each bite has layers of technique and flavors that go into it. And so you're talking about for 40 guests, you know, times 10, it's 400 plates.
Yeah.
It's a lot of touches for 40.
It is.
And it takes some stamina, it takes some organization, it takes some, like, you know, it's a different kind of cooking, you know? It's like doing a Friday night dinner service by yourself, right?
Yeah.
But for 40 people.
Yeah, all in 2 hours. Yeah, you're 100% right, Chef. Like, and there's so much that goes into each one of those dishes too. Like, if you think just about like the gougere.
Yeah.
Like,
that was a canapé.
Yeah, that was a canapé. And we had to warm the gougere, fill it with we had 2 different variations that we did. Fill it with the sauce.
Yeah.
Top it with the garnish, and that's just for one of the 3 or 4 bites that were on the canapé tray,
right?
And then we had that to do with every other piece that was on there per person per table, and so the amount of work that goes into all these things is sometimes you don't realize. And bringing the chefs in to experience that is very eye-opening on how they're going to develop the next menu, and transition into how they take this experience moving forward.
Right.
So
think about the logistics of your cooking, when you're doing it over a scale like that. The thing that really made it worth it for me, because you're right, it's a ton of work and it's a lot of fun, but interacting with the guests after that particular dinner, the last one was awesome. I mean, everybody was so appreciative and embraced it and got it. Like the thing that I liked most about it is that when I talked to everyone, they understood the theme, right? Everybody totally got it. And that to me was the biggest reward, is like, okay, then the story we were telling, it worked, right?
Yeah.
It kind of like inspires you to be like, okay, what other story can I tell? Or do I want to tell? Or what's important?
Yeah.
So that was really made it worthwhile for me to do that many dishes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm really hoping we get the same response this time, if not, even better.
Right.
Cause this is, I've really enjoyed doing this, and I hope this becomes a thing and we pack out the house, every month doing this thing and could just keep this train moving forward.
Are there any tasting menu concepts or ideas you've got, kind of seeds planted in the back of your head that you think we should do? Like whether it's a theme or an idea or a region or whatever?
That's a good question. Not really. I kind of like when I approach what's going on or what the menu, I start thinking about what I have around me. What's in season, what's local, what have I been into recently. Planning out far in advance, I might have an idea here or there that I want to try later, but typically is kind of over a week or 2 period before whatever tasting menu we're doing, or that kind of thing, or menu changes. I feel it's best to work inspired, and I might be inspired about something now, but that might change 6 months down the road, and so like when I was coming up with this dish that we were doing, that we're going to do next week, I just thought of like these things that I recently came across, like either a specific rice, local rice, or grain, with, it's spring, I'll have ramps, I can do this with this. And it just starts the creative process. And then you can start to think of what's the sauce going to be? What am I going to do this to it? What kind of technique am I going to put into that? And then it just develops from there. And I found that sort of method of working inspired on things that present themselves to you, or you find that's around you, kind of really helps shape that dish, or shape the technique, all that kind of stuff to turn something great.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I'm super excited. There's definitely a lot of stories to tell with the spring menu. I'm excited to share that with everybody. So this is going to be April 4th, Tuesday, next Tuesday. We'll have 2 seatings, 20 seats available for each seating. So 40 seats all day. I hope people want to come and get it. Yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, me too. It's going to be delicious.
Cool. All right. I guess that's it for the tasting menu conversation. Let's get to the kitchen and get cracking, huh?
Sounds good.
All right.